Hello everybody, Robert Marzullo here, and today I want to do a video about drawing legs. So let's get started. I had somebody ask as I've been uploading these various videos how to do legs, and I figured now is as good a time as any to explain that. So we'll start off by drawing the pelvic and the leg sockets basically. I always kind of look at this like you're looking at a toy with the parts ripped off, the legs ripped off. We know we've all done that. So, when you start there, there's your opening for the waist, and we'll fill in how the legs will come off this form. So, study your anatomy and, and your favorite comic artwork, whatever that may be, and you can get a good working knowledge of how legs work. So, I kind of always draw this front bend for the upper thigh area, and then I have it come back to the knee where I'll put like a little circle there, and then I picture that the leg does a slight bend backwards like this, and that the leg is about the same distance, if not a hair more, for the bottom portion of the leg, where I believe it's the tibia, fibia bones or whatever. Not big on knowing the entire anatomy. Now this one here would kind of push to the side and then rotate down. If you can kind of see that right there. Something to keep in mind when drawing legs is that they should have their own direction. They kind of, very rarely you're going to see both feet come out and point the same way, unless you're just, standing in line at attention, like a military style or something. But generally not. I mean, you're just not going to see that, and this makes for a more boring drawing. So, definitely shy away from that if you can. So okay, so now we'll fill in, again, you'll see a lot of times I start off with thicker kind of cylinders. So we'll start off with that. The one should kind of disappear a little bit behind the other, like that, well, at least from this perspective. Something like that, maybe even a little bit further. And you can over dramatize parts like that if you're really trying to push the envelope and, or envelope or whatever, but to really get at the you know extreme perspective of what you're trying to do. So here's our knee region. Basically the bone kind of comes out, pops through here. Now one of the things I always do when drawing these, and you want to find your lines and the way that they react. I always pull right from this back of the, I don't know what that's called, but the leg bone there. I'll pull right from there and then curve around down to the calf muscle like this. So I see the relationship there between those two, and that gives me kind of a landmark. You hear me say that a lot when I'm talking about drawing. Landmarks are key and essential, and they really help you to speed up your drawing. So once you find these landmarks, you can kind of flow through stuff a little bit easier. And you see I kind of skipped doing the cylinder drawing right there, just because, like I said, I'm used to the relationship of, once I get to this point with the upper leg muscle right there, it kind of, bulges up right here, and that usually ends at the kneecap. And then this bone right there that tucks behind it, or perceives to come around it in this 2D drawing. Once you pull from here, you can pull right into the calf muscle, and then do your other line like this. And this one actually really has a short little curve there, and then smooth it out, round it out there, and then it comes towards the side of the front here, side of the leg here, side of the knee, and this muscle. And this one, even though it's more of a long kind of drawn out pull like this, it's actually tucked more behind, especially at this perspective of the leg that we're looking at. There's actually another muscle, if not a series of muscles, that comes into the front here, and this tucks around to the side and to the back. So keep that in mind. Now at this point, the leg would probably at this angle, it would probably have the kneecap right about here, just where this one's pointing away more, like that. And then you can take this muscle, which comes right down the middle of the leg, and it gets larger as it goes up the leg like this. and use that as another reference point. And then from these out, this one's always lower. And forgive me since I'm not calling out the names here. Sorry. I wish I knew them, but I spend more time uh, looking at it and practicing the drawing of it than really trying to memorize all the names. So, like I said, forgive me for that. But um, I'm more looking for the visual representation. I'm not planning on getting into any medicine or medical drawing illustration work at this point. I just want to draw comic books, so I don't think I need to know the names for all the anatomy for that purpose. But I will try to learn it as I go, and I'm sure at some point, from studying it and looking at it for so long, it'll start to pop out and stick. Um, I could probably name off all the bones, but not the muscles as well. So I'll start to erase some of my construction lines like that. Now, another thing you might have heard me say, if you've watched any more of my videos, and feel free to do so, please, um, that once I get the basic outline and structure of something like this, I'll actually get rid of a lot of the construction lines, but also some of the interior lines, and then pick apart which ones I really want to keep. Because if you get too much in the habit of tracing out your muscles, it's going to look very rigid, stiff, boring. All the above. You really want to chop out a bunch of those lines, and mainly you want to look at it how shadow reacts to those objects, to those shapes. Not so much, oh, here, I know there's a muscle here, let me trace it out. That's where you make the mistake, and you get a very amateur look. Um, and I by no means think that I'm some great artist or some profound artist. I have a lot of growing and learning to do myself, but it's a journey we all learn together. So that's actually why I share these videos. Um, but so I'm just trying to share a little bit of what I've learned from that. So let's see. Again, this muscle would be lower, and then basically riding right above the kneecap there. And always notice kind of a little pocket of flesh or tissue or whatever the heck that is right there. So this rolls back, and then now this one would roll right into it or behind it or through it, or however you want to look at it. And then this guy over here is going to be higher. And there you go. Like it just starts to kind of come together. And I mean, off really basic rudimentary beginnings, and then you can kind of start forming it all together, and you start getting a decent looking leg. I'm not gonna say it's not a very great instance, but it's doable. And the foot would come down like this. It would tip off. He's probably wearing some shoes of some kind, some comic boots. Okay, now the only thing I could see here is that possibly that left leg's a hair long, but again, I don't mind that. And the reason being is that it's a comic illustration, and it's sometimes you want to over exaggerate to make the perspectives stand out, to make the scenes stand out a little more. So I don't think that I mind that it looks a little bit on the lengthy side for the left, or I guess his right leg. We're looking at the left leg. And quick way to figure that out is fill in some of the rest of the detail real fast. The relationship from the knee to this muscle up here looks a bit off too. But I could be being overly critical. I just want to make sure that I don't show you the wrong way. But look at your own reference too. Look at muscle magazines. You'll hear me say a lot. Look at other comic book artists that you like, if that's the end you're going to, or conceptual artists if you're into the gaming end of it. Do not feel bad one iota for looking at other artists that you feel are superior in nature, or they've done really great stuff. I can't stand when people say, how do they put it? Don't be a imitation of somebody else. And I totally do not agree with that, because we are all imitating life from the start, and then we're putting an artistic spin on it. And I don't care how much, unless you literally try to just sit there and copy another artist, you're not gonna come up with an identical recreation of their work. You're gonna, unless you're literally trying to do that, I think. So I feel that it's okay to study them as you would study life in the same instance, and you're going to come up with your own style. You're going to put your own spin in there over time. So um, I would just throw that stuff out the window and just study, study, study. And it, besides, when you're studying your favorite artists, it's inspiring because you're looking kind of like through a foggy window of what they've seen or done. So it it teaches you. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I studied people like Bern Hogarth, McFarlane, Jim Lee. You know, a lot of the great names and the big guys that have been around a long time and done some phenomenal work. But you know, Da Vinci. I mean, you got to study people like that to grow your perspective on what's going on there. So be sure to do that. Pick a collage of people that you like to emulate, and then combine that with your own perception of life around you, and see what you come up with. Okay, so there's one pose, and like I said, that leg, the more I fill it in, the more I do my rendering, it bothers me a little bit less. It's still not spot on, that's for sure, but I don't think I'd kick it out of bed. I'd probably roll with it and put a little bit more, cover up, put a little mascara on it, basically all the little trinkets and stuff. You start drawing all this stuff over top, and you can probably even make this positioning of this leg look alright. Okay, so on to the next. There's one set of muscle legs, muscular legs. There we go. Okay, so let's do the same set, or let's do a side shot. Um, and what I'll do here is I'll start off with the stick figure method. Okay, because that seems to be the easiest for people to grasp. So you got your stick figure, your knee, your ankle. You got the foot pointed down, back of the foot there, and feet always look weird to me. Okay, so now and we'll start with the cylinder effect again. So cylinder. Always draw the openings where they would intersect or connect. I think my proportions are a little funky, but we'll try to fix that. Kneecap, back, bend to the back of the leg. Alright, muscle there. And then this one coming down around the knee. And that little pocket of tissue or flesh we talked about. Okay, that looks a little chunky for the leg there, and a little bit short or shallow on the lower portion of the leg. But let's see if we can make it work. So there's our method with the stick figure then cylinder effect, which I've been leaning more away from. I do a lot more of the rope drawing now. I don't know, it has a lot more fluid kind of effect to it. So, but for this purpose, for this set of sketches, we'll do more of this. It is easier to get a working grasp of how these forms would work by breaking them down into these various shapes. So here, another cylinder. So I'd kind of draw this cylinder blocking it. And the foot, which would be kind of a wedge at first. Something like that. And kind of a point where the knee is. And then you starts coming together like that. And then, from here you could go to your rope drawing, where you know your anatomy, and the muscle here kind of again, it's tight to the knee because it's the inner one over here. So tight to the knee, and then roll that back. It's going to kind of come down a little bit, and then this other one's going to swoop around it. Another good thing to remember about muscles too, they're always bending and flowing. Behind the other one, in front of the other one, beside the other one, but they're always doing this. They're not, you can almost sit here and kind of practice these lines like this and get a feel for how muscles work and react. And then they kind of shade down when they go behind, like this would almost look like there's a muscle going behind two other areas, like that. But that's how they react in my opinion, or the way that I perceive it when I draw it. So that you could almost kind of just practice around and make some weird kind of creature there, but just practicing those kind of lines and that flow to it. And that's kind of how the rope drawing works. You just practice knowing where one part of the line starts and then where it finishes, and then you just kind of go with it. And then the next way you would bring that out is by your line weight. So this one I think comes through here. And the calf here, you're probably going to see where it splits onto the back of the leg from this angle just a little bit. And forgive me, because this is one, actually I probably shouldn't have picked this angle, because this is one that even kind of throws me off. But hey, that's how you get better for all the ones that you suck at. Shade that back. Now the other thing is, to make this stand out more, you got to picture that the leg is rounded this way, right? So there's our roundedness. Like if this thing was 3D, you'd see all these little lines like this to make it look 3D. And sometimes that's good to practice on doing too, so keep that in mind. If you're really struggling, if I start to really struggle with the sketch, I'll start trying to draw the little 3D lines all into it and use those as my construction lines. Sometimes it helps me out in a angle that I'm not really great at, so keep that in mind if it works for you. I don't know. But what I was going to get at here, since it's rounded like that, you'd probably shade somewhere in that effect of it to really bring that leg out, especially because you got to look in terms that this leg is up front closer to the viewer. Then you got the neck shape here, crotchal region, and then that other leg popped behind there, or hidden behind there. So what you want to do is think in terms of that. So you got basically 3 planes right here. Then you got your background, whatever else is going back there. It looks like it's flying, so maybe some clouds, whatever. But what I'm getting at is that the way to break up just these 3 planes is to think in terms of this leg is hidden, it's rounded there, add the shadow. Then maybe this one has some shadowing, but not nearly as much. The light looks like, from the way this shadow's reacted on this leg, that it's probably coming up and around like that. Actually on the inside of the leg too, or all this would be in shadow. So maybe you would come through here, block in some shadows here, and start intersecting and connecting here. This would almost probably all be shadowed, maybe some cross hatching to shade down that part of it. Nice heavier shadow on the base of the leg to really push that form into a more rounded look. And then just so on and so forth. Just keeping along that plane and adding your shadows based on that, and you can really start to push the forms of the leg out and get something more dimensional looking. Keep shading this for a minute. Yeah, and this video basically is more of how to draw legs, not so much the anatomy, and definitely not the correct anatomy, because you can see here that I'm not filling in the exact correct anatomy. I'm just kind of winging it, I guess, but but giving you an idea of how I would do a pose or a series of leg poses for my type of drawing, comic drawing, and the way that I do my comic drawing. And you see even that, I mean, it's not great, but it's working. It's there. You give that some motion lines like this, little cape flowing down like this, and you got a super dude flying up in the air. Just little things like that. Working all that in, and that pushes this leg out a little bit more. Some cool line shading work, line work. Okay, so there's another set of flying legs. And let me think of any other one that would help out here. Let me think. I would definitely recommend, if you wanna seriously get to know the muscles, picking up books by, like I mentioned earlier, one of my favorites is Bern Hogarth. A lot of influence in my work from him because it's just, God rest his soul. I don't think he's with us anymore. No, he's not, but he was a great, great artist. So his work lives on through his books, and they are just fantastic. Um, Let me see here. What would be another good pose? Here's a straight on. These are kind of enough to show you what the straight on is. So I don't want to be too redundant here. I guess more of a bend. Yeah, let's do that because that's a pretty tough one for most people, and myself included. So okay, here's the leg coming right at us. Okay, here's the kneecap. So we do it as a kind of funky looking cylinder shape coming at us. The knee, which I kind of perceive as I guess a wedge again, but comes out, down, and then it tapers both ways for a simplistic kind of representation of it. So there's that, and let's say the leg is going slightly back, but not all the way tucked back, like like as far back as it could be. Not quite that far back. Let's just go a little bit back there, and then here's the ankle, and then the foot would come back out. Okay, so now with the leg coming out this way, the muscle would come here, compass around here, and then back. This top portion of the muscle, that rounded one that goes down the middle of the leg, come down, kind of split the leg down the middle, but you'd have to distort the line work and round it out to make it look like it's coming out at you a bit. Again, keeping in mind that this one is tighter to the knee, and that this one would push back and then round out and away. And it helps to have those other ones drawn and kind of look to those for reference. With any tougher pose, it's good to kind of sketch out maybe a profile, whatever one's easier for you. For me, profiles are the easiest. So sketch that out first and then use that for reference and draw your more dynamic or more difficult pose. Erase some of the construction lines here. Now here the leg's going to look a little bit fattier, and then roll it back and then behind the knee area there. And then again, remembering that the knee would roll through here down to the calf muscle, like that. A little bit of line weight at the bottom of this to push that out more. Knee would flatten out a bit right there. I generally kind of shade that right there to show the change. And basically like that, and just keep working it until you get it the way you want. And again, you'd put a heavy shadow probably on the inside of the leg and the lower part of the leg. Start pushing your forms out. This part of the leg would probably get blocked in shadow there. Base of the calf there. And the foot would come out at you. You'd see a little bit of the heel. Then it would quickly come out to the viewer like that. And another good trick for creating the illusion of depth in 2D drawings, the points where they come together like this and there's kind of a bend coming in here And in this way, you can kind of block this whole area in shadow if you wanted to. Some areas, I don't know if it works so much in this part, but what I'm trying to explain is that in comics it works really well because you can kind of do this neat shading like this, and it makes it look more like that area recessed back. Almost makes it look like that area recessed too far back, so I don't like it right there. But you can use it in, different aspects of anatomy or figure drawing. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yep, just like that. And then do your line work, and keep it in mind that for any of these to look really cool, I would draw a couple sketch layers and keep fine tuning it until I got it to a cleaner finished line work. So okay, so hopefully that helps you out. I wanted to do one on legs since I was asked to do it, and there it is. Hopefully you like that. Be sure to subscribe and share the videos so that I can keep bringing these to you. And if there's anything that you'd like to see, be sure to message me so I'll know what's working and what's not. And thanks very much for watching, and be sure to check out more of my work at ramstudios1.deviantart. And this is Robert Marzullo signing out.